Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Discovery 2013. My name is Martin Lord. I'm a Business Development Manager with the Ontario Centres of Excellence. So on behalf of OCE, I'd like to welcome you to this theater session co-produced with the Mobile Institute called Internet of Things, Sensor-Based Nanotechnology Research Futures. And I hereby hand you over to your moderator today, Mr. Michael O'Farrell, founder of the Mobile Institute. Michael?
Thank you very much, Martin. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming up nice and early and learning how we can explore into the next generation of where a lot of this, let's say, untethered environment is going for us all to be more engaged with the surroundings, the presence, and the areas around us, whether they be people, places, or things. Just give you a background on ourselves. We've been working with Martin and the team at Discovery to create mobile innovations at Discovery, and this is our first year of working together. We've had 30 speakers internationally come in and locally looking at the next generation of mobile services. And I'd like to welcome you, and again, thank you to the OCE and the team of our collaboration opportunity during Discovery. Just to give you a rundown of some of the sessions that we have left today, we're going to be talking about the Internet of Things, of course. We also have Enterprise Mobility, ROI 2020, happening in room 801A. BYOD and mobile security is another area that we're going to be exploring. Then we have Connected Car this afternoon, Taking Ontario Mobile, which is an initiative that's put together by OCAD, the Mobile Experience Innovation Center, and the province of Ontario to see how we can harness the energies of the province to become a global leader in the mobile category. And then we're going to be looking at mobile healthcare futures to wrap up the day. One of the areas that is extremely interesting and invigorating to me, being in the industry for 20 years, is the next generation of services. And what we're looking at in the next generation of services is the future, and the futuristic services of where artificial intelligence, computing, communications are combining with almost nanoscale capabilities that is just blowing your mind of everything that we thought of or went to school with, or every science fiction we saw growing up is coming into a reality or a state of reality that creates a whole new opportunity for anybody, from researchers to academics to organizations to institutions to private, public sector, to be aware of where we're heading towards in this near future when it comes to machine-to-machine interfaces as well as sensor-based technologies and research opportunities. And we truly feel that this is a unique opportunity for the province of Ontario, as well as for Canada, as well as for all innovators and entrepreneurs worldwide, to collaborate and work together to see how we can harness the powers and harness the energies of what's coming very near term. And some of the great speakers and panelists that we have and experts in the field that we pulled together today are going to share you some of the visions that they've had and what they see and what's going to be coming very near term, and it's not as far as we all think, of where we're going to be living in this Internet of Things world. What we pulled together is a few international and local speakers that I just wanted to give a little bit of background on before we start. First, we have Phil Lam. Phil is a PhD student at the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering at the University of Toronto. Phil is a candidate at the Interactive Media Lab, as a PhD candidate, at the Interactive Media Lab, part of the Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering at the University of Toronto. His current research focuses on the novel applications of mobile sensing and computing in healthcare, exploring the clinical applications of highly detailed information describing people's walking motions. This work has applications in a myriad of areas ranging from fall risk estimates to rehabilitation, an early warning system for neurological disease. Again, we're getting in from the body to body area networks to personal area networks that goes right into the neurological, which is very fascinating. Thank you for being part of the discussion, Phil. And next to Phil is Ajit Jaokar. Ajit Jaokar is, in 2009, Ajit was nominated to the World Economic Forum's Future of the Internet Council. In 2011, he was nominated to the World Smart Capital Program in Amsterdam. Ajit moderates, chairs Oxford University's Next Generation Mobile Applications panel and conducts courses at Oxford in the next generation of telecom trends. In 2012, he was nominated to the board of the Connected Liverpool Resilient Liverpool programs, based in the city of Liverpool for Smart City Visions. Thank you for joining us as well, Ajit. Next to Ajit, we have Jerome Brio, and who is the Director of Technology Strategy and Chief Technology Officer at TELUS, in the office of the Chief Technology Office of TELUS. Jerome has been working in the telecoms industry for 15 years and with significant breadth and depth of experience in Europe and North America. At TELUS, Jerome now heads the lab and innovation centers in the CTO department. Thank you for joining us, Jerome. Next to Jerome, we have Arielgarten, founder and CEO of InteraXon. If there was ever a gap between science, art, and business and technology, Ariel has closed it. In 2007, Ariel co-founded InteraXon, one of the world's leading companies creating brainwave control products and experiences. Ariel regularly attends lectures at MIT and has given lectures at TED.com, as well as that had over 250,000 views. This year, she gave the opening keynote at Le Web, Europe's biggest technology conference. And then finally, we have Michael Kosic. Michael Kosic is joining us, and he's a professional engineer, industrial engineer with an international MBA from INSEAD. Michael is joining us again from, is the CEO of XYZ Interactive. Michael has successfully led the conception, ramp-up, and growth of both independent startups and internal divisions of existing companies in the internet, mobile, retail, banking, and high-tech spaces in both North America and abroad. We welcome Michael to our panel. Thank you. So how we're going to run this session is we're going to have a few point of views and perspectives provided by each one of the panelists and experts in the category of the machine-to-machine, sensor-based, and even going down to neurological to nanoscale type of thoughts of where we're heading in the next generation of Internet of Things. Each panelist will provide us about 5 to 7 minutes of their perspectives, and then afterwards we're going to have a question and dialogue together from some of the areas that we've been exploring with their presentations that will lead into an open Q&A with the audience. So if you can, jot down your questions, think of them, implant them, and maybe we'll do some telepathy together at the end of the session to see how we can get the dialogue started with you all. So first off, I'd like to introduce Phil Lam, and Phil, if you'd like to come up and share some of your perspectives.
Okay, here we go. Set this so I don't bore you for too long. Okay, so hi, good morning. Thank you for coming. My name is Phil Lam, as Michael mentioned. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Toronto Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering. It's quite a mouthful. I represent the Interactive Media Lab, which is headed by Mark Schignall. He's on a plane to Sweden right now, which is why I'm here, which is why I'm here. I'm going to talk to you in 7 minutes or less, a little bit about what we do and how it relates to the Internet of Things. In terms of a healthcare context, which is what my research is all about. So I want to start with this. Maybe you'll recognize it, maybe not. It's a pulse oximeter, which essentially looks at what your blood is doing, how much oxygen it's carrying. It's very important for looking at a lot of different things. So surgeons use it for general anesthesia. If you have sleep apnea, or if you know somebody who has sleep apnea, that's a very important measure. It's also good for anemia. So if you're pregnant, a lot of pregnancies result in anemia. That's an issue as well. And so the technology is about 40 years old, and in the last couple of years, it turns out you can get one of these for between $200 and $2,000, depending on the particular feature set. What we're working on in our lab is hello, there we go. Is this, which is essentially a pulse oximeter in functionality, except there's two things that are kind of special about it, and which is why I'm talking about it. One is that it's really, really, really cheap. It's only $10, which is kind of cool. If you think about it, a lot of these chronic health issues that you might address with a pulse oximeter affect people that are disproportionately of lower income means, right? So accessibility from an economic standpoint is a fantastic thing. And the other thing is, the way we get it to that price point is we hook it up to a phone, and we let the smartphone do all the thinking, essentially. So what you have there is you have a pulse oximeter that's now connected to basically anything you can plug into the internet. So from a scientist standpoint, this is fantastic because if you think about something like sleep apnea, and even anemia, we know what sleep apnea is. We know how to diagnose it. We know who gets it roughly. We don't know how many people. We have no idea when people get sleep apnea. We don't know what percentage of the population gets sleep apnea. We have no idea how these things work. And because you could plug this in and get data back from people who are using it, you could find out some of these things using a very large data set. Something else we're working on is this. This is my personal favorite project because it's my PhD work. So what we're doing essentially in a nutshell is we're looking at this question of if you could have a fantastically accurate picture of how people walk on a very long-term basis, over weeks, months, even years, what could you extract from that data that tells you something about their state of health? So a great example is falls risk. So if you know somebody that's older, somewhere between a half and 2/3 of all hospitalizations for people over the age of 65 are basically directly or indirectly due to falls. And it's very serious because a fall is usually an event that precipitates this decline in health. It's such a bad scene. And so if you could look at the way someone's walking and really understand, their risk of falling as a function of time, you could address that proactively with physio, say, or maybe a change in living conditions. Lots of people, as they grow older, they move from a 2-story home to a 1-story home, things like that, right? So if you could get a fantastically accurate picture of what's happening with someone's physiology just from the way they walk, that's something that's very interesting. And again, it's sort of this thing where if you apply the right technology, you don't need a giant lab. This is something we're trying to do. This is an old prototype that I have a picture of up here, but it's a beautiful picture, so I just keep using it. And basically, it's this little box that you strap to your ankle, and it tells you all sorts of wonderful things. And it's, you plug it in every week or so, and you charge it up, and otherwise it just sits on your shoe. And the whole thing about that is, again, it's exactly like the other sensor, the pulse oximeter, where you get this sense over a long period of time. You get a lot of data. You get population data, and you can start talking about this question of health in terms of big data. So all of this really leads to this question of how are we looking at healthcare in the sense of how technology is going to inform it, how technology is going to affect it. What I have here is an example of what we consider to be the gold standard in medicine in terms of scientific inquiry. This is it's a type of study called a randomized control trial, and in a nutshell, without exposing the many difficulties, essentially what happens is you ask a question. Let's say I want to know about this pill. Does this pill actually do anything, or is it useless? So what you do is you take a very large population of patients and you split them in half. And half of them you give the pill to, and half of them you don't. Again, massive oversimplification. But essentially, you look at the differences between populations. And this is a fantastic thing. This is a fantastic example. And really, the two things I want to point out about this, I'm not disparaging it. This is great research. But you'll notice that there's maybe 20 MD PhDs involved in this work. It's a massive undertaking. The average cost of an RCT is $12 million, according to the NIH. And the results they look something like this. So if you'll notice, the little part of the diagram that I've circled on the bottom left-hand side is the number of participants. And unfortunately, it's a little small. It's roughly 7,500 people. So, and the conclusion, essentially, without overcomplicating it, is that if you drop the low-fat yogurt from your diet and replace it with olive oil or nuts, you're less likely to get a heart attack. Which is, it's nice to know, right? But it's a very specific question, and it's a very specific answer to a very specific question, and it's very expensive. So maybe I'll conclude my talk with this kind of maybe like a vision of the future. So keeping in mind, all this technology we've discussed in terms of assessing your health on a long-term basis, cheaply, accessibly, maybe we can combine it with this future piece of technology that is probably not very well represented in terms of details, but it's essentially a fridge that can tell you what you've eaten, right? It tracks what you've eaten. So what we've done essentially is we've closed the loop. We've said we have a fridge that talks to someone somewhere, and it says, this person has eaten this and this and this and this and this. And on the other side, we have sensors data that describes health outcomes, right? So what's really interesting about this is we've taken this RCT and we've massively scaled it up, essentially, and we've dropped the costs also. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and just kind of as an imagination, you know, if you could really, like the things that we could do in terms of understanding human health are phenomenal when you think about the possibilities that are afforded by this technology. And that's my 7 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Will. Ajit? Yes, forward, green, red, back. They're going to set it up.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Ajit Jaokar. I won't talk about myself because Michael's introduced me very well. So, I look about mobile, I'm talking about mobile sensor networks and how all these things come together. And I like cartoons and comics, so I think that this is the Witch Wendy. And I think if you want to understand the future of Internet of Things, sensors, mobile, and so on and so forth, if I had a phone in my hand at the moment, if I swished it like a wand, and if nothing happens, which nothing happens right now, we know that we are not in the sensor world. But if everything happens, so it knows who I am, it knows where I am, it can give me personalized information, so on and so forth. So the phone becomes a wand, and the wand becomes kind of your presence. And I think I switch this phone every year, and still nothing's happening. So very soon, at some point, something will happen. So I look forward to that world. But the key here is that it's a very serious point I'm trying to make. It is not a trivial thing to talk about just the wand. This is the premier of China, the ex-premier of China, who made this fascinating statement, which said Internet plus Internet of Things is the wisdom of the earth. And that sounds very interesting coming from a technocratic, highly respected Chinese ex-premier. But he has a point there, and that is the key to what we're trying to say. And why is it all important is because if you look at the economic prosperity of a country, I work very closely with the European Union on the future policies of economic growth, same with the US as well. And I think that basically, if you look at economic wealth of any country, it's basically energy plus entrepreneurship plus connectivity. And connectivity can be split into sensor networks, network level, and application level. So basically that short of finding oil in your background, in your backyard, which I believe is the case here, but I think that to make a difference to the economic potential of a country, you need connectivity. And the connectivity stretches that at a few levels, which is partly where we are going to talk about the sensor levels and what it would mean to the productivity of a country. If you look at the term Internet of Things, the Internet of Things implies certain things. It implies smart objects. It means for a chair, for example, it must have at least 3 things. It must have identity, it must be uniquely identifiable, something via IPv6, something like that. It must be able to communicate, so it must have a radio to go forward, and it must have either a set of sensors or actuators to act upon that information or capture that information. Now when you put all that information, or rather that chair, in a context of a social context like the Starbucks, then you got a whole different set of data coming through. So you got not only the data captured by the sensor, but also the physical context and so on and so forth, the social context as well. So that really, in a nutshell, is the Internet of Things that I see it from this slide. And it's quite important to get that. Machine to machine, on the other hand, is a separate term completely. It's a term which is used by the telco networks. And the machine to machine traditionally requires a cellular radio at one end, which is all great and good, but machine to machine, in my view, is a subset of the IoT debate, because the IoT debate is a lot wider. For example, if I give you the example of healthcare, in that slide there, I've shown the different type of radios which are available on a particular healthcare node, and just cellular is just one of them. So when you talk about machine to machine, people traditionally get very excited about this term, but it's a specific subset of a wider context. And you can have many different forms of radios, not necessarily all of them going by the telco network. Also, the other irony is that most telcos actually, to be slightly controversial, don't like machine to machine, because it's not a very scalable business model at the moment. You always look into specific verticals, and those verticals have certain characteristics which make them non-scalable. So to put it into context, this 50 billion figure by Ericsson is quite an interesting figure. Ericsson's been talking about this figure for a while, saying by 2020 we should have 50 billion connected devices. And to put that into context, that's quite a big jump. If you look at the first 1 billion mobile devices in 2002, sorry, 2 billion in 2005, 3 billion in 2007, 4 billion in 2009. So to go and say 20 billion mobile device, 50 billion by 2020 is quite a big number, and they must have some reason for saying that number. And I think there is some potential for that. But at the moment, there's a whole bunch of different devices which are coming through vending machines and so on and so forth, and they will always remain. And of course, there is a whole bunch of different levels at which sensor connectivity is coming through. And I think some of the discussions today will go on to those levels. So how we have separate hubs making this connectivity, but also a whole bunch of devices which are completely coming up very organically. So I think my few, as I come to the conclusion of what I'm trying to say, in terms, how much time have I got, Michael?
About 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, fine. Yeah. So if you look at the top-down led initiative, you have something like this, which almost applies to every market. So you look at healthcare and so on and so forth. You've got standardization, you've got deployment, and so on and so forth. But at the other hand, there is the citizen-led initiative, which is a more grassroots initiative. So my question really is, where is the glue? And the machine on the right is the world's first fax machine. I think we have a network connectivity problem, always, network effects problem. And wherever you get the network effects, that's where you want to look into. So where is the glue? And my conclusion is basically that there is 4 or 5 areas which are interesting: white space networks, smart cities, apps and app stores, and open source hardware. Just briefly going through all 4 of them, we can have a more discussion. White space networks, quite a completely different way of looking at network. The old analog TV band now using like unlicensed radio called Wi-Fi on steroids. Smart cities, a lot of work around smart cities, specific verticals which help you to get people going on a certain direction. App stores, I think app stores and smart cities, app stores and IoT go quite interestingly enough. An IoT app store is quite a different proposition because it needs you to sense and actuate almost in real time. And of course, my favorite is grassroots hardware, open source hardware like Arduino or Raspberry Pi. My personal startup, FeynLabs, is in that space. I had a very interesting talk in the workshop on Saturday. So here is my final top 10 conclusion, my last slide basically. IoT has many opportunities, but still not quite got the network effects right. Open source hardware is key. M2M is not the same as IoT. The verticals are a logical place to start, but verticals will need a lot of potential. Network effects take some time. The mobile is a place for network effects because you have a application to point connectivity rather than person-to-person connectivity, which helps a lot. That's the key thing. NFC is an interesting technology, but I think it will initially go for the physical click, not a transaction. Still many hurdles to cross for the transaction. The superhighway versus fixing potholes problem, that's interesting. People try to think of creating a superhighway. It takes a lot of money, but the fixing potholes problem, which is a smaller issue and a much more grassroots initiative, I think is much more interesting. White space network, I talk about them, M2M, not IoT, and apps may be the glue. Apps may be the glue which bring everything together. So I think that's my 7 minutes. Perfect, good. Perfect. So I hope to have a discussion on all these topics as we have them now. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ajit. Okay. I'm just going to grab some. Just want to grab some of my notes. Jerome, here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So my name is Jerome Brio. I head the innovation centers here at TELUS nationally. And you can see from my slides, very different from everybody else. You can see the company who has the biggest marketing budget here on this panel. And the drawback with the big marketing team is you have to vet everything that goes public through them. And I didn't get a chance to get it approved. So I'm joking, but I did intend to show those slides. For those of you who don't know TELUS very well, these are our creators, and this is our tagline: the future is friendly. And what I try to do in our innovation centers is really trying to make the friendly future happen today. So we bring the latest and greatest technologies from our partners and all over, and what we like to do is integrate those components into the best experience, the TELUS experience that we like to sell. And the Internet of Things is interesting to me for various reasons. We have a big market in healthcare, M2M, although, like my colleague Ajit was saying, is not truly Internet of Things. It is actually the beginning of what Internet of Things is about. M2M is really making sensors available online and really communicating data through our wireless networks or backhaul networks and so on and so forth. And so with M2M, for instance, what we do out west is a lot of our partners, our customers have oil wells that are connected through our network and transmit a vast amount of data that they can then analyze. This was data that they would, before they had to go and travel around deep in the countryside, deep in the interior of Alberta and BC to kind of fetch that data. So it's bringing data to your fingertips in a more real-time manner. And so to Ajit's point, it's not really Internet of Things, but it is the beginning, in my opinion. Internet of Things is really having objects communicate with one another, and being able to interact with those and derive value from it. Who wears a Nike fuel band here? One person. Who has a Nest thermostat at home? Good. Three of us now. So an easier question is, who has a smart TV? And probably a few more people, exactly. So smart TV is, you have your TV connected to the internet. It starts to, get interesting. I recently purchased one, and I was amazed. I found out by chance. I was on my phone on the YouTube app, and I clicked on a little icon I didn't recognize, and all of a sudden my video was playing on my TV without even me realizing. And this is where you can see the power of connecting your home through the internet, having your appliances now talking to each other. And it's not just interacting with you, but it's interacting with one another. And this is the true power of the Internet of Things. And when you have your fridge talking to your TV, talking to your a thermostat, whatever it is, we can't really think today about what we might need tomorrow, and people who own a smart fridge probably are wondering, why did I buy this? It was very expensive, and I have to enter on a very small screen what I'm consuming, what I'm taking in and out, and when you have a family of more than one person, then it becomes just untrackable. So, when your Apple has the little sticker that has, today it has the code for you to scan at the grocery shop, when this is integrated with RFIDs that your fridge is able to recognize, this will become easier. And the Internet of Things is all about making things easier to work together. If there's one thing we learned from Apple, is making the experience as easy as possible is what people are after. You don't know yet what you may need tomorrow, but if we look at if we move now back into the healthcare industry, and we also TELUS also has a huge market and we have a huge vested interest in the healthcare industry. We've made an acquisition a few years ago that really launched the TELUS Health initiative, and you could see how a diabetic might be interested in tracking, their sugar levels, their blood level, and every other aspect of their life, and may not be as worried about privacy, more worried about staying alive and making sure they stay healthy. And this is where having sensors that you will just put on your body, really thin, like a Band-Aid, a smart Band-Aid, that could become really attractive. If you can make it at the right price tag, and price will only get better and will only go down as future goes. But this is where the Internet of Things really starts getting into, it gets really powerful. So you have, sensors that interact with your body that interacts with the internet, that interacts with your cell phone. And this is where we at TELUS and in my innovation centers, this is what we try to emulate to try to make the future friendly happen today. There you go.
Thank you, Jerome.
Hey there, I'm Arielgarten from InteraXon, and we create brain sensing technology. So we've all heard that we have sensors that track our sleeps and sensors that track our steps, but there's one very important thing that we're able to track now with our technology, and that is, of course, the mind. Do I have slides behind me? Okay, they're working on slides. Who needs slides? So if anybody wants to come and actually try brain sensing technology, you're welcome to do so. Our booth is right behind us. It is the big bubble that is sitting just behind you there. And I'm just going to advance the slides so that we're at the right point of the presentation. So this is what EEG used to look like. You used to be able to track your brain, but you'd only be able to do it with masses of wires coming out of your head. This is actually theme in sensor technology, that the sensor technology has always been there, but it hasn't been packaged in a form factor that's accessible to consumers. At InteraXon, we've just come to market with Muse, which is the brain sensing headband. It has sensors on the forehead and behind the ears, and lets you interact wirelessly with content on your smartphone or tablet using only your mind. It works by tracking your neural activity. When your neurons communicate, they do so electrochemically. Those electrical chemical signals can sum outside the head and be read as brain waves. We then send that brainwave activity to your smartphone or tablet, possibly your TELUS phone, and let you interact both with content on your smartphone or tablet and actually understand what's going on inside your own mind. This is our application layer. Other people can readily build applications on top of our platform layer. I started working with this technology in Dr. Steve Mann's lab. This is actually Toronto-based technology. And we started doing concerts where 48 people at a time could interact with music using their mind. This is actually us at the Premier's Innovations Awards 3 years ago, making a concert on stage where people were creating music with their mind, and you were able to see the content of their mind. This is, so we're really interested in being able to connect to real things with the mind. This is, of course, the Internet of Things. This is our levitating chair. Simply by relaxing, we're able to detect a change in your brainwave activity, and the chair would rise to the ceiling, thanks, of course, to a handy-dandy winch in the ceiling of Steve's lab. And this is the demo that we have running over here. It's a 3D environment that actually responds to your brainwave activity. The biggest thing that we ever let people connect to with their minds occurred at the Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics. There, people in Vancouver got to connect to some massive things: CN Tower, Parliament buildings, and Niagara Falls, directly with their mind. Over the 17 days of the Olympics, 7,000 people got to individually interact with these icons, sitting down in front of a big screen showing the CN Tower, changing their brain state, and watching the tower in real time change color and change speed of rotation. Some of you may remember this. So this is one demo that I really like. This is a very simple game called Zenbound. Here, Paul is focusing on the object on screen. As he focuses, it rotates. The more he focuses, the faster it rotates. The really fun part comes after the game. So it's not about being able to control stuff with your mind. It's about being able to see what your mind was doing during every moment of gameplay. So this is an opportunity to not just understand or have a machine understand something about you, but actually let you peer into your own mind and understand something about yourself. So this is the true basis of the quantified self movement. Once you understand what goes on inside your mind, once you have an insight into it, you can start to improve it. You can do exercises to improve your cognitive function, decrease your stress. If you were able to actually track what was going on in your mind, what would you want to know about yourself? When we look at where this technology is going over the next decade, we're going to start by seeing technology that connects your brain to your machine so that you can understand something about yourself. In 5 years from now, you're going to have a critical mass of headsets in the market, and you're going to start to share and communicate with one another using that data, like tagging photos on Facebook with the emotions that you had when you saw them. In a decade from now, it's going to be connected to all these devices in your environment. So your computer is going to know that you're frustrated and change the size of the monitor so you can interact more effectively. Or your iTunes playlist will know that you're depressed, and it'll suggest songs that it's seen you play when you're happy. Or your email will know that it's really a bad time to send you all this random garbagey email because you're really trying to concentrate on something really hard and it doesn't want to take you out of the zone. So this technology is going to help technology understand you better and create the conditions for you to interact more easily so that you can focus on what really matters to you. I know this sounds totally like science fiction, but it's actually here, and it's real, and it's now. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go. Mike Kosic, CEO, XYZ Interactive. If we could roll that video if possible, to give you a quick view of what we do. So what you saw there was a tablet. Yeah, he's running in. Yeah. And around the bezel of that tablet are common transmitters and receivers, very low-cost components that are in the supply chain today.
Hi there, Mike Kosic, CEO, XYZ Interactive. In my hand, I'm holding a standard tablet. Around the bezel of this tablet are transmitters and receivers, common ones like you'd find in your TV remote control. With our software driving these massively available low-cost components, what you get is a full 3D input system. So as you can see, the position of my hand in physical space is represented not only in Y and in X, but also in Z by the size of the ball on the screen. So you can use this for a variety of gesture-based input controls, zigzags, spirals, swipes, things like that. Or you can use it for touchless menu navigation using a hover to select paradigm like in the Microsoft Kinect, or even doing Z pushes by moving your hand in and out. Thank you.
So I wanted to give you a quick visual of this. So, you know, my founder and I, when we met in the 90s, he was at Nortel, we both believed in a future of low-cost, ubiquitous sensors, and we wanted to be part of that. So we kind of went down this path. But it's not until the Microsoft Kinect came out about 4 years ago that really changed everything, brought this from Microsoft, they brought touchless control from science fiction and Hollywood into our living rooms. So it's the fastest selling consumer product in history. They sold more in the first 60 days than Nintendo did in 2 years with their Wii. So we want to bring this type of low-cost, ubiquitous, touchless gesture control and sensing to all sorts of consumer electronics. So the hardware cost that you saw there was sub-$1. So there's some wonderful camera-based technology, wonderful computer vision-based technologies, but for this kind of technology to propagate and become ubiquitous and universal, the cost has to be really, really low. So that's really the where we're playing in. So in Ajit's presentation, he had the usual suspects. We want to be selling and integrating into all of those. In Carl's presentation, he talked about gate analysis. That's wonderful. It becomes even more powerful when you start to add information about the environment around the person and how they change their interactions based on that environment. To do that, we need, again, very low-cost sensing. So that's really the area that we're in. Now, we've had to focus, and it's been a difficult struggle, we've had to focus on existing components in the supply chain. So things become very, very interesting as soon as you raise or release that constraint. So we're working with a Canadian company that does quantum films. They claim they can miniaturize these receivers that we use down to the size at which you can't see them with the human eye. This becomes very, very interesting because then you can literally paint a surface and it becomes a receptor for our technology. This is really, really important for devices like, for mobile and wearable devices where the real estate is a lot more challenging from a component perspective. So I like to say things like, I don't know what the future interface of the smartphone will look like, but I can bet that that battle for that interface will be fought in 3D. So, some of the things that we're going to talk to about in this panel today are the, the futures and what what additional support can be given to companies like us to focus on some of these futures. I would have loved to focus on this quantum film technology years ago, but we just didn't have the appropriate funding and resources. And a lot of that has to do with the Canadian environment and supporting innovation, and I've got some thoughts on that, as well as the general fear of anything remotely hardware related in Canada as compared to in the Valley. So yeah, so I encourage you to check our stuff out and ask me any questions you have about this technology. Thank you very much.
Well, that was great. And it really is just the tip of the iceberg, as everybody here on this panel is way a lot farther in where their aspirations are and what they're trying to do with this topic or this area of Internet of Things, especially when you get into the sensor area. And one of the things that seems prevalent in everything that we've talked about or heard from you right now is maybe addressing privacy. So let's get the elephant out in the room, as they say. And it seems like you're getting a really intimate relationship with the persona, with people, as where that data is heading. And maybe you can just give some perspectives on, maybe Ajit, you could start off on where you're seeing, the EU and governments looking at this data perspective. And we'll just take a quick area of understanding what we think on privacy and where we got to protect ourselves.
Right. I think that coming from the EU and being involved with some of those discussions quite deeply, the EU definitely drives this agenda very strongly, even for global companies, because they all have to operate in Europe, and that happens with Google and Facebook and so on and so forth. But I think there is two sides to this. I think that if you look at the potential of big data and some of those startups which are coming through, including many of the things like the healthcare application and so on. They all need kind of data to improve themselves. And I think there is a bit of a risk that we could end up just looking at the bad side of privacy as opposed to looking at what the benefits are of sharing data. And that's always, I think, a discussion which regulators look at it retrospectively. Regulators look at everything retrospectively. So Facebook screws up something, then they rush on to do something. But I think that there also needs to look at this more proactively, not from a negative sense, but also from a positive sense. So that's my personal view.
Yeah. Ariel, if you'd like to jump in.
Sure. We've definitely taken a proactive position on privacy. Obviously, we're dealing with brainwave data, which is not actually as sensitive as people think, but we like to treat it as if it's as sensitive as people imagine in the very worst case scenario. So we've created something called the International Center for Brainwave Ethics, which brings together experts across privacy, policy, security, neuroscience to come together to really create a structure where we can understand what other precedents are like in the biodata space, apply them to brainwave technology, and create standards that we hope others will adopt across the board.
Terrific. And maybe just to flip the question, because I think that's great, we wanted to get the dialogue going, like we said when we connected before, is that there is people and there is organizations and groups addressing potential privacy, both for the merit and for precautionary measures as well. And maybe Michael, you can probably help out. Where do you see the sensor-based media, smart city, healthcare, where do you see the industries that can really catapult and take advantage of what you've been trying to address or what we're all trying to bring to market? What would be for some of the environments?
So, yeah, I certainly think that a lot of the data should be exposed and made available to both public and private sources. I think privacy is very important, and there are certainly challenges. I think that the problem is you can only say you can only be blocked by it. So you can take these initiatives to try to get ahead of the ball as much as possible. But I don't think we're ever going to get a full stamp and seal of approval from any governing public body to say, go ahead, you're now cleared. There's always that specter of I'm sorry, we've changed the way we want to think about this. And that's a real risk to try to mitigate and manage it from a business perspective. But I do think to answer your question around growth and kind of smart cities and sensors, the more you can expose that the data from these ubiquitous sensor networks, the more it can be shown as a power of to do good with, to help with energy conservation, to do all of those things that that will make people think that that it's okay to use and collect such data on the large scale. I think that it's impossible to stop the or stem the flow of that data. I think that we're not talking about Big Brother, we're talking about a lot of little brothers.
So as an from XYZ perspective, what would be your holy grail of saying, if I can talk to this audience and get people to collaborate with me to create the next wave of this category of service, what are you looking for?
So for us, we want every single device to be collecting information and essentially tracking movement. And the first stage of that will be through kind of passive movement, where we're not sure what that object is in front. So in the digital signage, we're not the really expensive camera-based technology that goes in front of the retail store that does face tracking that draws you in. We're more like the try me button that reaches out from the aisle. We're the technology that knows exactly what your hand is doing under each shelf. We're at technology down at that level, and there's a lot of data there, so that can be used for determining how customers interact with products on the shelves, how often they spend in front of a particular product from a data gathering perspective. And then as we evolve and the devices start to have IDs and everything has IDs, then you know where all of the relevant objects are, and they have there's more context and meaning.
And so Phil, maybe give your perspective on, looking what you're trying to do in the between the neuro and the brain and the foot, for example. I'm simplifying it very much, but how would you see the merits, and what part of the ecosystem do you need in industrial, public sector, private sector to be pulled together to make your dream come true of how you can help individuals in well-being?
Well, I mean, so there's a couple of aspects to that, right? I mean, as a research lab, the things I described in my little talk there, a research lab isn't a place where you manufacture those things, right? It's not even a place where you find people that know how to manufacture those things generally, because graduate students they're not production engineers. That's not why you go to graduate school, right? So essentially, if you're interested in developing a technology, a university setting is a fantastic place to ideate. It's a fantastic place to innovate, but you need, essentially at some point, you need an industrial partner to bring that technology to market. And that's really the key. So many innovations in a lab setting die because they just never see the light of day. And some part of that is commercialization issues. Some part is, it never really lands at the door of a partner in a shape that can be commercialized, or there's other issues, there's IP issues. In terms of, it's interesting from a scientist's perspective, getting data back from this stuff is always challenging, right? Because it's kind of a collective action problem. People want to benefit, but sometimes it can be tricky to understand what exactly you're getting out of giving back. So a lot of these networks where you're trying to get data for your studies, it's really hard to get, simply because you lack distribution in some ways, right? You lack reach, you lack the ability to get in front of the general public to really talk to them, to tell them, look, the science is amazing, it'll help you, it'll help society. All you got to do is participate. Does that kind of cover the?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And looking at that and getting help, how does TELUS look at innovations that you can bring in and help support as the one with the largest marketing budget? Let's get the largest innovation budget going as well.
I wish that was true.
Yeah.
So actually, I want to come back to the privacy. Sorry to disrupt you, but I have a very strong opinion, and I want to expand on the 2 points that were made before. I don't care too much about privacy. I'm one of the few people who, I guess maybe it's a generation thing, I don't know. But I wish that regulators would actually regulate to enable rather than to prevent. And that annoys me really a lot. And I see how it's changing, and new generation is coming in, and they don't really care as much about privacy. I think privacy is important, but don't hide behind it to prevent things from happening. Deal with the people who misuse the data rather than prevent everybody from reaching that data. And when I look at some of the cool services, wouldn't it be great to be able to leverage Ariel's technology to kind of sense and RFIDs, like you were saying, around sensors that are so thin that you can't actually see them to the human eye, and combine that with various other data. So you could have your apple talk to your orange. So you could actually detect that I'm craving a chocolate bar, but I'm going to reach out to my fridge and I'm going to pick the apple because that's the healthier option. And then big data all that valuable data, expose that to public health services and kind of track how your population, their eating habits. You can do it in an anonymous way to avoid the privacy discussion, but wouldn't that be cool to be able to expose all that data so that you as an individual are able to track what you're doing yourself, and if you're deviating from your health diet, health plan, or whatever it is, then you can track that a bit better. But then also expose that data to public health sectors so that you can track how your population is doing, and kind of spearhead campaigns to stimulate that.
I'm agreeing with you in the theory of it, but how are the big companies taking on innovation? So if we're small companies, or we're small, we're from scientists to startups to mid-size to the next generation of wave, which industries, which companies are really trying to attract that, are investing in it? Maybe you can give us perspective, not only from TELUS, but where you see from your organization. Who are the best people? IBM, TELUS, other carriers? Who are the ones that are leading in the innovation?
I think it's a mixed bag. So my view of the world is we want to partner with whoever has the technology. The view of our executive is you've got to be careful sometimes, because if we offer a service to consumers and the company goes under for many reasons, who's going to support that product once it's out there? And people are going to they are going to be calling us, not the company who is no longer in existence. So it's finding that right balance, but the beauty of our innovation centers is we can incubate some of those services and really try it out and see how the public respond to that, right?
Perfect. So you're saying there is incubation opportunities within TELUS that you can provide some infrastructure, some value add, in the sense of all your big data in your back end and your office and networks, as well as potential distribution. Is that correct?
We can.
Yes.
I mean, it's obviously there's a big gap between incubating something that's cool and productizing it to make it a common service to everybody. But it's a first step. You got to start with those small steps and move forward that way, right?
Sure. Maybe Ariel, you can give us going from research as Phil has done to the commercialization opportunities and successes you've had on getting the Muse more aware, consumer and commercially. How did you, what bridged that gap? It's not only funding or getting investment, it's how do you bridge that gap when we're getting to something so surreal that people have challenges to accept and adopt it? Maybe you can just give us a quick 30 seconds on that.
So we have a massive challenge in front of us. I did, exactly what was described. I took a technology out of the laboratory, said this has commercial potential, people are controlling the world with their minds, we have to know about it. I basically bootstrapped the company for 3 years doing large-scale projects with the technology, brought together a fantastic team, raised my first round of funds, I'm very sad to tell you, from the United States, raised my second round of funds from the United States, and then raised my third round of funds from the United States and Asia. So the really sad story here is Ontario has been incredibly supportive. We were, kind of lauded as one of Ontario's first and foremost technologies and given amazing opportunity and great granting support. But when we think about the commercial market, they have an amazing governmental market here, but when we think about the commercial market, it's the United States that has to support technologies like this.
And that's a challenge. I think that's something we should all try to work together to address, and we had Premier Wynne, show, the support from the sideline. How do we get them further engaged in looking at this next generation of opportunities? Well, I wanted to open up, if we can open it up to the floor now, to the first series of questions, and if you'd like to step up to one of the two mics, tell us who you are and the question that you have for the panelists, and if it's specific to one, then you can address it to them individually, but we'd like to share the question or opportunity. Please go ahead.
Yes, hello, my name is Murray. I have two hats that I'm wearing from this question, although I work with the Mobile Institute, and I know a number of the people on the stage. I think there are 6 very intelligent entrepreneurs on the stage, from what I've heard. And to speak to the funding perspective, I put my other hat on, which is the National Crowdfunding Association. I wanted a comment maybe quickly from each of you about the funding gap, that first 50,000 that maybe the young entrepreneurs need to get started. And is there an option relative to crowdfunding? And maybe Ajit has an idea from the UK, or I'm interested in your perspective.
So methods of funding. So maybe Ariel, you want to take?
So we actually had a crowdfunding campaign. We used Indiegogo. It was very successful. Indiegogo is relatively unknown here relative to Kickstarter, but Indiegogo is going to be doing a Toronto launch soon. I should say that first $50,000 probably did come from some governmental agency, whether it was IRAP, OCE, or NSERC. So as much as I was complaining about large funding not being available in Canada, the small, nascent supportive funding is really wonderfully available here, and I'm very grateful for it.
So it seems like we have a sweet spot in that let's help entrepreneurs get started. It's how to get to that next round or that next level of investment. So that's why we have to go across border, unfortunately.
Which I was very well prepared for here.
Right. Michael?
Yeah, so we also got some IRAP funds and had some early kind of university collaboration work that was good. We got our some private kind of friends and family and angel funding in Canada, which is good. I've had to go to the States to get most of my customers, but that's still okay. But as we're now moving into our next round, I'm definitely looking at if I'm going to raise or focus my raise here in Canada on lowering the amount significantly. And I'd really like to make it work here. I think crowdfunding is a very interesting option for us. The interesting thing is we want to stay a licensing company, so to be able to work in very many different verticals. If we picked one particular application or product, I think it would be a perfect match for crowdfunding. So maybe finding 8 or 10 smaller companies or other entrepreneurs who may want to run with a particular embodiment of our technology and go the crowdfunding route might be a very interesting way to do. And if the barriers for people doing that were lowered, then and they could get going very quickly, I think that would be a pretty viable option for us.
So that's a novel idea that you just brought up, and maybe this can apply back to Phil, is maybe a licensing model or a partnering or collaboration model with anybody here that wants to take your technology, package it up, and look at a vertical or a horizontal that they could service. That's right. And get into a different funding environment as a team versus trying to do it all yourself.
And then the message is a lot clearer for these crowdfunding campaigns. It's very specific and it's tight rather than our technology, which is so broad and can be applied to so many markets. Yeah, absolutely.
Any further questions? Yes? Thank you.
Hi, Lee Cocking, VP of Strategy at Fixmo, a local mobile security startup. Kind of got 2 questions. First, so given all the communication protocols that exist for M2M, and maybe this is focused more at Jérôme and at Ajit, what is the role that carriers are going to play in this future moving forward? If they traditionally played in kind of this GSM, GPRS, 3G space, how are they going to monetize all this traffic and all this data that's happening for M2M? And the second question maybe is more for Ariel, and it's kind of off topic, but I'm just really curious, are there any correlations you've seen with Muse and sort of the traditional health benefits with meditation?
So, to your first question about M2M and monetizing it, we monetize it today. It has a much lower ARPU than a normal user, but it's the value is in the data that you bring to the customer. So if you're able to harness it in a way that's going to be more meaningful to your customers, then it makes more sense. Then you can find new ways of charging for such data or for M2M. So there's many ways. And if I had the silver bullet, I don't think I'd be sitting on this panel. I'd be a multimillionaire in the Silicon Valley, taking some time off. But these are some of the answers. There's a tremendous amount of data available already from service providers that we haven't even scratched the surface on. So today I already know about where people are making a phone call from, because from a low full intercept point of view, I have to. Do I use that today? No.
Can I add something to that? That's a very good question. I think that I kind of alluded to it in my talk as well. The main issue is that from a telco point of view, at least in Europe, and I believe globally, 2G is the technology to use for machine-to-machine networks, because it's the most common, most available, so on and so forth, which is one of the main reasons for maintaining a 2G network even now. The problem is that, of course, it doesn't scale cost-wise. So the model breaks down when you have bigger things. M2M at the moment, again, is vertically oriented, and that is different regulations for different things, healthcare and so on and so forth. So that, again, doesn't scale. So from a telco point of view, most of them say the right things because they have to say the right things, because that's where the world is going. But I think it's a bit of a challenge for them. But that's not the same for others. I think that people will just come in the game and they will do what they have to do. So that's my personal view, but it's very much what I have seen in Europe as well, and this is the reason why.
And from a technology point of view, so today GPRS is the predominant technology used for M2M, but LTE is fast growing, and more importantly, we don't know what our customers will want to transmit 2 years from now. And this is where LTE, maybe they'll want to transmit video streams for whatever, right? I don't know. And this is where there's additional business model that can play into.
So we're going to have to wrap up now, and I think Ariel can answer your question on the meditation benefits, which I'm very interested in. It's just a timing thing here in the room. So I'd really like to thank Michael, Ariel, Jerome, Ajit, and Phil joining us here, and thank you all for sharing your time this morning on this very interesting opportunity. And please look forward to enjoying the rest of Discovery. And if you want to get more into mobile, we're down in room 801 talking about enterprise mobility and mobile security next. Thank you very much.